do I feel happy in life? Let's see. Let's say I hope I'm finding happiness, you know? Because I think I have also a gay side to me, also a sad side. And I think that's the way with people also. But there is something in people where they need solitude for a while.
Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. Poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for.
तुम्हारा रिजल्ट डिसाइड नहीं करता तुम लूजर हो कि नहीं, तुम्हारी कोशिश डिसाइड करती है। पर कोशिश तो आपने बहुत करी ना बेटा, हाँ?
The Indian film fraternity was stunned by the sudden passing away of actor Sushant Singh Rajput. The 34-year-old was found dead in his Mumbai home. The post-mortem report stated that he died because of asphyxia due to hanging. The news sparked a huge outpouring of grief on social media. But soon the conversation turned to the issue of depression, a common mental disorder. However, it continues to be one of the most stigmatized mental health issues out there. This prevents a large percentage of those who experience it from seeking professional help. Actress Deepika Padukone, who herself has battled depression in the year 2014, reacted to Sushant's death and said it was important to reach out. Talk, communicate, express, seek help. Remember, you are not alone. We are in this together. And most importantly, there is hope, she wrote. Globally, more than 264 million people of all ages suffer from depression. It can change the way you feel, think, and handle daily activities. It can lead to feelings of powerlessness, hopelessness, and numbness. And 2020 is turning out to be an unusually tough and challenging year. Experts believe that the coronavirus pandemic can also trigger a mental health crisis. In the last 3 months, the world has changed dramatically. The Wuhan virus has infected more than 8 million people in 213 countries and territories and left more than 450,000 dead. COVID-19 patients and those caring for them could be especially at risk for anxiety and other mental health conditions.
It is definitely a pandemic of anxiety and mental health. So what we have here, the pandemic, first of all, classified as environmental issue that perpetuates a mental health issue. Okay, so environmental that creates this issue mentally with us. Then we see a lot of people who had a latent mental health condition, such as they were prone to stress, have now started to deal with aggravated stress. Or if they had anxiety, they have now got aggravated anxiety. If they had dysphoria, which is I'm feeling like there's nothing left in life, that has also become aggravated.
Why this pandemic has really affected mental health is because one is, of course, the social isolation. So there is more loneliness. You are, locked up at homes, and you're not able to connect with people that you used to earlier. There is a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. So a lot of people, they are worried about their health. They're worried about the health of their family members.
Almost half of the world's population was also under lockdown. According to experts, the decline in social activity and restricted movement has caused a tsunami of mental illness. The Indian Psychiatry Society says that the number of mental health cases, including anxiety and depression, has risen 20% since the lockdown was first announced. Coronavirus has destroyed jobs worldwide, so this spike in numbers is not surprising. People are complaining about troubled sleep and insomnia, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and even suicidal thoughts. The lockdown period also saw an increase in gender-based violence and child abuse cases.
With depression and all these various things, you also see a rise in, whatever comes with it, which is mostly aggression comes with it. So you're seeing rise in, domestic violence, child abuse, people in close proximities, find it very difficult to evolve, to live together. So that issue comes up as well. You find that people are unable to cope with their work life because they have to take care of family life as well. And now that you're at home, it's almost like, you're juggling two things at one time. So people don't have the capability of scheduling their tasks as well. Finding that time to be able to. So these are things that cause your stress. These are everyday events that are causing stress. And that, if it flips, becomes, aggravated. And when it becomes aggravated, it's difficult for them to, reel it in and to become, be able to deal with the situation.
Coronavirus is also changing how we grieve. With hospitals operating a no-visit policy to restrict the spread of infection, people who have lost loved ones have to contend with the additional trauma of not being able to be with them in their final moments, or giving them a final send-off, as death rituals have also changed dramatically. The impact will continue to be felt in the years to come. As the pandemic wears on, it is likely the mental health burden will continue to increase.
The grieving method anyway, what we go through when we lose somebody is very long, but when you're unable to do the final rites, when you're unable to see them for the last few hours of their life, this causes a lot of emotional distress in people and guilt, and the guilt becomes very high. And that guilt and almost self-flagellation becomes, creates a cycle of negativity.
What is clinical depression? Feeling sad is an integral part of depression, but they are not the same. Knowing and understanding the differences can help a person recognize when to seek treatment. It is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. While some people describe depression as living in a black hole or having a feeling of impending doom, others feel lifeless, empty, and apathetic.
I think I look at it as, two important, red flags that you can be alert about to distinguish between sadness and depression. So the first point would be whether it's going away or not. Is it continuously there, for days? Then it's important to know that it's something it could be something that is more serious, that needs probably a professional help. Because sadness is something that comes and goes, and you may not feel sad throughout your day. You may feel sad some part of your day, and while the other parts of your day, you may be able to switch your emotions. But when it comes to depression, it becomes difficult to switch that emotion. You're there in that sad state persistently. And the second part, how I look at, differentiating is that whether it is affecting your day-to-day lives or not. If your work is being impaired, if you are finding yourself to be less productive, if you're finding that you're not able to focus, concentrate, and it is impacting your life, then it's definitely something which is more serious, which is more than sadness.
Depression is an extremely complex issue. No one knows what causes it. Some people experience depression during a serious medical illness. Others may have depression with life changes, such as the death of a loved one. Financial troubles like bankruptcy, debt, and loss of a job can trigger depression. Taking certain medications can also cause symptoms associated with depression, as can using illegal drugs and/or misusing alcohol. Some may have a family history of depression. Clinical depression is the result of a chemical imbalance in the brain. People with depression appear to have physical changes in their brain. The significance of these changes is still uncertain, but may eventually help pinpoint causes. Changes in the body's balance of hormones may be involved in causing depression. Hormone changes can result with pregnancy and during the weeks or months after delivery. And from thyroid problems, menopause, or a number of other conditions. Depression is more common in people whose blood relatives also had or still have this condition. Researchers are still trying to find genes that may be involved in causing depression. According to experts, depression varies from person to person, but there are some common signs and symptoms. They can include trouble concentrating, remembering details, and making decisions, fatigue, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness, pessimism and hopelessness, insomnia, early morning wakefulness, or sleeping too much, irritability, restlessness, loss of interest in things once pleasurable, including sex, overeating or appetite loss, aches, pains, headaches, or cramps that won't go away, digestive problems that don't get better even with treatment, persistent sad, anxious, or empty feelings, suicidal thoughts or attempts. Sadly, almost everywhere in the world, mental illness is a taboo subject. Given how prevalent it is, the ignorance about mental health issues that continues to exist is perplexing. According to the National Center for Biotechnology Information, about 14% of the global burden of disease is attributed to neuropsychiatric disorders. A study reported in the WHO conducted for the NCMH, or National Care of Medical Health, states that at least 6.5% of the Indian population suffers from some form of this serious mental disorder, with no discernible rural-urban differences. When it comes to countries, India is the most depressed country in the world, followed by China and the USA, according to a 2018 survey by the World Health Organization. The parameters taken into account were anxiety, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. Another report by the WHO warns that depression will be the single biggest cause of ill health in the world by 2030. Although the majority of people who have depression do not die by suicide, having major depression does increase suicide risk compared to people without depression. The risk of death by suicide may, in part, be related to the severity of the depression. The average suicide rate in India is 10.9 for every 100,000 people, and the majority of people who commit suicide are below 44 years of age. There are a lot of factors that can affect mental health, and the place where you spend the most time after home, the workplace, can also be a contributing factor. Mental health woes often go unaddressed, as apart from awareness, there is an extreme shortage of mental health workers like psychologists and psychiatrists.
I think it's a lack of awareness of what mental health really is. Also, people take it personally. Family members take it personally. So say, for example, let's talk about a child with a learning disorder. Family members take it personally that their child isn't smart enough, or family members take it to heart that, oh, maybe if my child is sick, it may be a genetic malfunction on my part. People take these things very personally, and that is what creates the stigma. Additionally, what has been created by movies in India have really brought about a negative impression of what mental health is. I mean, if you look at the depiction of mental health in Indian films, it's literally over the top, where people are shouting and screaming and behaving irrational and hitting. This is very rare. A person with mental health illness is very rare to become violent, but yet the idea is that somebody with mental health illness is violent, so you should protect yourself and be safe. There are very few mental health issues that cause aggression, and most people are so devoid of energy that they can't be aggressive towards anybody else.
The increasing severity of the coronavirus pandemic has many people on edge. The loneliness from coronavirus isolation is taking its own toll.
J'étais emprisonné en fait. J'étais enfermé, ne pouvoir rien faire, ne pas savoir où aller.
I was actually imprisoned. I was locked up, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go. We had restrictions, so we couldn't go too far. For lack of means and possibilities, I was like really in a box. Two of my children were no longer there. They had gone to their father's house. I found myself alone in a room. I had too much pressure, I didn't know what to do. It just came like this all of a sudden.
Seul dans ma chambre et voilà, j'avais trop de pression et je sais pas, c'est venu comme ça d'un coup.
Ville Evrard, a mental health establishment in Paris, has seen a significant increase in the number of patients during the COVID-19 crisis.
À partir de la troisième semaine, on a eu une sorte de montée.
From the third week on, we had a kind of increase in psychiatric demand. The patients who showed up were patients with acute psychotic episodes. We had 3 times as many as in 2019.
3 fois plus que la période.
This cruise ship embarked on a sail between Florida and the Bahamas in early March. On the 13th of March, US authorities issued a no-sail order as the virus crisis ramped up. Ships with passengers offloaded them, some more easily than others, but there were many who were unlucky. The Celebrity Equinox was anchored just off Barbados as a precautionary measure, but on board, a mental health crisis was unfolding.
It's rough. I've felt my mental state, for the most part, deteriorating the further and further we go in. And it's funny, around day, I think it was like 30 or 35, I told my nurse on the other ship that I was really struggling. And they told me, you'll be fine, just work your way through it. Until they tested positive and up to day 35. And then they said to me, I don't know how you managed to get through this.
The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention requires crew to be repatriated on charter flights, but thousands were stranded at sea as companies waited for permissions from health authorities, even after most passengers had disembarked.
Without telling me in advance, without preparing me, without giving me any notice, without nothing at all, they decided to move me to the hospital ship. And I had a bit of an emotional breakdown. I had a severe panic attack. I was having a hard time breathing. I felt a lot of pain in my chest.
Coronavirus has taken a toll on health workers too. Medical professionals have been cheered as heroes in the virus crisis, but the work has also been exhausting and traumatic, even for people accustomed to life and death situations. Hospital staffers in New York, which was the epicenter for the outbreak in America, say they were broadsided by the sheer, shocking volume of cases. As healers, they felt the pain of not being able to offer a cure while pushing through their own concerns about contracting the virus. There's little doubt that frontline healthcare workers are under a tremendous amount of stress during the pandemic, and ensuring their mental well-being is critical to the world's recovery.
I guess I'm wondering kind of what people have been kind of holding in terms of, I don't know, the sort of like residual effects of all of that.
This one day, sorry, he put my food on the stairs. I felt like an animal.
Imminent fear and physical risk to their health because of the coronavirus is very real. And we're beginning to see them showing the signs of trauma, which is really a perceived or realized threat to one's physical well-being. And that's going to be something that has far-reaching consequences as well.
To help their staff cope with the COVID-19 crisis, the Baltimore-based Johns Hopkins Hospital launched a colleague-to-colleague initiative called the Psychological First Aid Program. Within a span of 10 weeks, volunteers spoke with 2,000 co-workers.
In the worst case, if people do not get adequate support in time, they can be traumatized. They can develop symptoms of burnout. They can develop accelerated burnout, and sometimes they can even develop post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
It's not just healthcare. COVID-19 could reverse decades of global progress. More than 1.5 million Americans filed initial unemployment claims in the week ending June 13th. With this, the virus layoff has topped 45.4 million claims. Experts warn of a mental health fallout caused by catastrophic levels of joblessness.
I think it was last week there was somebody, 24-year-old kid, I just left home, got my first job, and I lost my first job, and I'm back at home. And as a man setting out into the world, that mind-blowing. On the other hand, 55-year-old guy that, is like, wow, I'm definitely going to lose my job. I don't know how I'm going to economically, financially be able to support my family going forward.
Do you have a question related to your own or someone else's mental health? Whether they are a friend, family member, or colleague, there are many ways to support somebody who you care about. Talking to someone is often the first step to take when you know they are going through a hard time. This way you can find out what is troubling them and what you can do to help. If you aren't a trained counselor, let them lead the discussion at their own pace, and don't make your own diagnosis or second guess their feelings. This brings us to the most important point. If somebody tells you they are feeling suicidal or can't go on, it is very important to encourage them to get professional help. Also remember that anxiety and stress persists among all age groups. The rates of depression show an alarming increase during adolescence. Depression doesn't always need a reason to show up. This makes it hard to understand. But even with all the knowledge in the world, it's not something we can always protect our loved ones against. But the more we understand the risks, the more we can work to stop it from becoming a shadow pandemic.